The sky above Cape Canaveral looked brittle, almost blue-white, on the morning of January 28, 1986. Bleachers full of schoolchildren shivered under scarves and handmade "Go Christa" banners while TV vans hummed behind them. Dishes pointed at the launchpad. This was supposed to be a victory lap for NASA. The 25th Shuttle flight, the first teacher in space, a live lesson from low Earth orbit. Instead, 73 seconds after liftoff, the Space Shuttle Challenger disintegrated in midair, an icy explosion carried live on half the televisions in the free world. 7 astronauts died, and a nation froze in stunned disbelief. What history books rarely detail is just how hard the countdown fought against itself. 5 delays in 6 days had stretched the mission schedule to the snapping point. Engineers spoke in exhausted hushes about violated safety margins, but managers stared at calendars, not thermometers. When dawn broke on the 28th, the Challenger sat beneath a latticework tower that glittered like a frozen waterfall. Long, milky icicles hung from access arms. Translucent sheets coated the giant orange external tank. Inside the vehicle assembly building, Roger Boijali and 3 colleagues from Morton Thiokol dialed into a midnight conference call no one present would ever forget. Their PowerPoint showed photos of charred rubber O-rings from earlier flights and a single graph, color blocked in red, forecasting joint failure below 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Overnight temperatures had plunged to 28. Larry Malloy, NASA's solid rocket booster manager, listened for 40 minutes, then fired back a question that landed like a gavel. "My God, Thiokol, when do you want me to launch? Next April?" Under pressure, company executives took a 5-minute recess, flipped their verdict from no-go to go, and faxed the approval to Houston. Boijali stared at the signature line and felt, in his own words, that the crew was doomed. The countdown resumed. 6-year-old children held tiny flags. Unaware a decision made in a fluorescent conference room had just placed a ticking bomb under the orbiter's left wing. At throttle up, the booster's aft field joints flexed, hot exhaust clawed past stiffened O-rings, and a gray plume flickered against the cold sky, still invisible to network cameras. Inside Mission Control, Flight Dynamics Officer Brian Perry noticed his radar plots disagreeing by half a mile. 3 separate dishes argued about where the shuttle actually was. Such split-track data could mean birds, crosswinds, or a catastrophic breach. Perry leaned into his headset. "Trajectory. Do you see what I see?" No answer came before the world found out. 73 seconds after ignition, the external tank's liquid oxygen dome ruptured. An orange fireball consumed the stack, and twin boosters spiraled away like flaming javelins. On CNN, the screen bloomed white, then gray, then 1,000 shards of aluminum foam cascaded toward the Atlantic. Steve Nesbitt, NASA's public affairs commentator, had trained for every normal ascent milestone. Nothing in his script covered what he now watched. He exhaled once and delivered a line that would live in infamy. Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction. He refused to say, "explosion," not without confirmation that the crew cabin hadn't somehow survived. The gap between what viewers saw and what NASA was willing to declare cracked open a vacuum of confusion that swallowed every living room in America. 900 miles north, President Ronald Reagan paced the Oval Office rehearsing his State of the Union address. He planned to open with economic figures, pivot to missile defense, perhaps give the shuttle broadcast a quick patriotic nod. Kathy Osborne, his executive assistant, fielded a call from the White House switchboard. "Challenger has broken apart on live TV." She muted the receiver, turned on a corner set, and watched the replay loop. Orange bloom, 2 white boosters cartwheeling into smoke. Her breath stuck in her throat. When she finally stepped through the office door, speech notes trembled in her hands. Before she could speak, Advisor Pat Buchanan barreled down the hallway, shouting, "Mr. President, the shuttle blew up!" Reagan's eyes widened. The evening's celebration script dissolved on the spot. By sunset, he would stand before the nation, voice thick with grief, quoting a poem about slipping the surly bonds of Earth. Meanwhile, salvage helicopters combed an ocean strewn with twisted metal. Amid the debris, divers located the crew cabin, largely intact. 3 personal egress air packs had been switched on. Toggle switches on the dashboard were flipped from ascent to emergency mode. Forensics suggested at least some of the crew remained conscious as the module arced 4 miles high, then plunged, reaching 200 miles per hour before shattering on impact. NASA never issued a definitive public verdict, but internal memos admitted blunt force trauma and oxygen starvation, not the initial blast, likely caused the final fatalities. The thought that the astronauts experienced minutes of hopeless freefall became the tragedy's most unsettling footnote. In Houston, Nobel laureate Richard Feynman accepted a seat on the Rogers Commission, the presidential panel investigating the disaster. During televised hearings, he borrowed a cup of ice water, dunked a strip of rubber O-ring into it, and cracked the chilled sample between his fingers for the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "for a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations. For nature cannot be fooled." The demonstration stripped NASA of its invincible aura. Managers who had chased launch quotas over safety found themselves exposed before the world. Yet the families of the fallen refused to let Challenger become the full stop of America's spacefaring sentence. When Vice President George Bush met the widows and parents inside a quiet room at Johnson Space Center, he braced for outrage. Instead, June Scobie Rogers, wife of Commander Dick Scobie, clasped his hands and pleaded, "Don't let this be the end. Dick believed the future is worth risk. Please keep flying." Other relatives nodded through tears. Their collective courage fortified a shaken agency. Shuttle flights resumed 32 months later with redesigned boosters and new escape protocols. Out of the ashes grew the Challenger Learning Centers, hands-on classrooms where millions of students have since flown simulated missions in honor of a teacher who never got to broadcast her first lesson from orbit. In the decades since, the legacy of 51L stretches from the Hubble Space Telescope's breathtaking images to the International Space Station's 24-hour laboratory above our heads. Every countdown now echoes with a hard-won mantra. Launch commit criteria are written in blood. ICE inspections run deeper. Dissenting engineers hold veto power. Presidents are briefed in real time, not by aides sprinting down hallways. The next time you watch a rocket pierce the sky, remember the invisible threads tying present to past, a faxed approval signed under pressure, a radar screen flashing mismatch warnings, a public affairs officer choosing words sparingly, a president rewriting history's speech, and 7 pioneers whose final ascent teaches us still. We keep reaching because they reached. We count risk because they paid. And every plume against a blue morning sky is a reminder that progress is never free, but silence would cost us far more.